The snow had been falling since dawn that Christmas Eve, blanketing the city in a silence that felt almost sacred. Thomas Bennett walked briskly down Madison Avenue, his daughter Lily secure in his arms, her small face pressed against his shoulder. At 4 years old, she was getting heavy for long carries, but she'd been fussy all morning, and he needed to get to the office for just an hour to sign some papers before the holiday shutdown. He was the CEO of Bennett Capital Management, a position he'd worked 15 years to achieve. The navy overcoat he wore was tailored, his shoes were polished, and his watch was the kind that whispered success rather than shouted it. To anyone passing by, he looked like a man who had it all figured out. They didn't see the exhaustion in his eyes. They didn't know that his wife Jennifer had passed away 18 months ago, or that he was still learning how to be both mother and father to Lily. They didn't see him lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if he was doing any of it right. The office visit had taken longer than expected. By the time Thomas and Lily emerged back onto the street, the afternoon light was already fading into that soft blue twilight that comes early in December. Lily was hungry and starting to whine, and Thomas realized with a sinking feeling that he'd forgotten to pack her snacks. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Lily said for the 3rd time, her voice taking on that edge that meant tears weren't far behind. "I know, sweetheart. We'll get you something right now." He looked around and spotted a small bakery across the street, its windows glowing warmly, decorated with strings of lights and garland. Golden Crust Bakery read the sign above the door. Through the window, he could see display cases filled with bread and pastries, and the place looked clean and inviting. Perfect. They'd grab something quick, then head home. The bell above the door chimed softly as Thomas pushed it open. Warmth enveloped them immediately, along with the heavenly scent of fresh bread and cinnamon. The bakery was beautiful in its holiday decoration, twinkle lights, draped along the crown molding, a small Christmas tree in the corner adorned with ornaments, shaped like croissants and baguettes, wreaths hanging on the walls. Neon signs reading Happy Holidays glowed in the windows. Behind the counter stood a woman arranging pastries in the display case. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she wore a simple green apron over a cream-colored sweater. Her face had the kind of quiet beauty that came from within, though Thomas noticed the tiredness around her eyes, the slight slump of her shoulders. She looked up as they entered, and her expression shifted immediately into professional welcome. "Good evening. Welcome to Golden Crust. How can I help you?" Her voice was warm, but there was something fragile underneath it, like glass that had been cracked but was still holding its shape. Before Thomas could respond, a small figure emerged from behind the counter. A boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with sandy blonde hair and wearing clothes that had seen better days. A jacket that was slightly too small, pants that were worn at the knees, shoes that were scuffed and old. But his face was clean, his hair was combed, and his eyes were bright and curious. "Mama, are those customers?" the boy asked, looking at Thomas and Lily with interest. "Yes, Oliver." "Go ahead and work on your coloring in the back, sweetheart. I'll call you when we close up." But Oliver didn't move to the back. Instead, he moved closer to the display case and looked up at Thomas and Lily with the frank, assessing gaze that children have before they learn to hide their thoughts. Lily, suddenly shy, buried her face in Thomas's shoulder. "What can I get for you?" the woman asked. Her name tag read Rachel. Thomas shifted Lily in his arms. "What would you like, Lilybug? A cookie? A croissant?" Lily peeked out at the display case, her eyes widening at the array of treats. She pointed at a chocolate croissant. "That one, Daddy." "Great choice," Rachel said, reaching for the pastry with a piece of tissue paper. "Anything else?" "I'll take a coffee black and—" Thomas scanned the case. "One of those cinnamon rolls." As Rachel prepared his order, Oliver continued to watch them. There was something about the way the boy looked at Lily's winter coat, at her clean clothes and good shoes, that made Thomas uncomfortable. Not envious exactly, but wistful, hungry for something that went beyond food. Rachel worked efficiently, wrapping the pastries, pouring the coffee into a to-go cup. Thomas noticed how careful she was, how precise her movements were, as if even these simple actions required concentration. "That'll be $12.50, Rachel said, managing a smile. Thomas pulled out his wallet and handed her a 20. As Rachel made change, Oliver spoke up suddenly. "Excuse me, sir?" Thomas looked down at the boy. Yes? Oliver glanced at his mother, then back at Thomas. There was something in his young face that was far too old, a seriousness that children shouldn't have to carry. Are you going to throw away what you don't eat? Oliver! Rachel's voice was sharp with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, he doesn't mean... I just wondered, Oliver continued, his voice steady but small, because sometimes people don't finish everything. And if you don't want it, we could... Mama hasn't eaten today, and if there was expired bread or things you don't want, maybe... He trailed off, and the silence that followed felt enormous. Rachel's face had gone pale, then flushed deep red. Oliver, we don't ask customers for... Her voice cracked, and she stopped, pressing her lips together hard. Thomas stood very still, Lily warm and solid in his arms, and felt something shift inside his chest. He looked at Rachel, really looked at her, and saw what he'd missed before. The clothes that were clean but worn. The thinness of her frame that spoke of too many skipped meals. The way her hands trembled slightly as she held out his change. He looked at Oliver in his too small jacket, with his serious eyes and his brave, humiliating question, and he understood. Actually, Thomas said slowly, his mind racing, I just realized I ordered wrong. Lily can't eat all that chocolate croissant by herself. And I'm not actually hungry for the cinnamon roll? I must have been distracted. He set Lily down gently, keeping her hand in his. Would you mind if we just left these with you? It seems a shame to waste them. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Sir, you don't have to... I know, Thomas said gently. But I'd like to, actually... He looked around the bakery at the cases still full of unsold goods, at the beautiful decorations that must have taken time and care to arrange. It's Christmas Eve. What time do you close? In about an hour, Rachel said quietly. At 6. And what happens to everything that doesn't sell? Rachel looked down. I take it to a shelter when I can. Or we keep what we can use. Thomas made a decision. It was perhaps the easiest decision he'd made in months. I'd like to buy everything, he said. Rachel's head snapped up. What? Everything in the cases. Everything you have left. I'd like to purchase it all. Sir, that's probably $200 worth of... That's fine. Thomas pulled out his wallet again, this time removing his credit card. And I'd like to close the shop early, if that's all right with you. It's Christmas Eve. You should be home with your son. Rachel was crying now, silent tears running down her cheeks. I don't understand. Why would you... Because your son asked me a question, and it was the bravest thing I've seen in a long time. Because it's Christmas Eve, and no one should be hungry or alone. Because I can help, and that should be reason enough. He paused, then added more softly, and because my wife died last year, and I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, to feel like you're failing, to skip meals so your child can eat. I know what it's like to be too proud to ask for help and too desperate not to need it. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking. Oliver moved to her side and put his small arms around her waist, and the gesture was so protective, so loving, that Thomas had to look away for a moment. Lily tugged on his hand. Daddy, is the lady sad? Yes, sweetheart. But sometimes people cry when they're happy, too. Is she happy? Thomas looked at Rachel, at Oliver holding his mother. I think she's going to be... It took 20 minutes to pack up everything, the breads and pastries, the cookies and cakes, all of it carefully boxed. Thomas insisted on paying full price for all of it, plus a generous tip that Rachel tried to refuse until he gently told her that refusing kindness was its own form of pride, and pride helped no one. They talked as they worked, Rachel and Thomas, while Oliver and Lily sat at one of the small tables sharing the chocolate, croissant and chattering to each other with the easy friendship of children. Rachel told him her story. How she'd been a pastry chef at a high-end restaurant until they'd downsized. How Oliver's father had left when Oliver was a baby, disappeared so completely she'd never been able to track him down for child support. How she'd used her savings to open this bakery 2 years ago. How it had been doing. Well, until a corporate chain opened, 2 blocks away and undercut all her prices. I'm 3 months behind on rent for the shop, and 2 months behind on our apartment, she said quietly as she packed croissants into boxes. I've been trying to figure out what to do, how to make it work. I thought maybe after the holidays business would pick up, she smiled sadly. But I know I'm probably kidding myself. Oliver and I will be okay. We always figure something out. It's just... It's just what? Thomas prompted gently. It's just hard to keep believing everything will work out when evidence keeps suggesting otherwise. She taped a box closed. But we manage? Oliver is fed. He has a roof over his head. He goes to school. That's what matters. And you? Thomas asked. When was the last time you ate? Rachel didn't answer. That's what I thought. Thomas pulled out his phone. What's the name of your landlord? For the shop, I mean. Mr. Castellano. But why? Just checking something. Thomas stepped away and made a quick call. When he returned a few minutes later, he had a strange expression on his face. How much is your monthly rent here? He asked. 4,000, Rachel said. Which in this neighborhood is actually a steal. But it might as well be 4 million right now. Thomas nodded slowly. And how much would you need to catch up, to have breathing room, to really give this place a fighting chance? Rachel stared at him. I couldn't possibly ask you for... You're not asking. I am. How much? She calculated in her head, her expression pained. 20,000 would cover the back rent. Get me current on all the supplier bills? Let me actually buy quality ingredients in bulk again, maybe do some advertising. But sir, Mr. Bennett... Call me Thomas. Thomas? She said, and her voice broke on his name. I can't take that kind of money from a stranger. Then don't think of it as taking, Thomas said. Think of it as accepting. Think of it as letting someone help who wants to help, who can help without it causing any hardship. Think of it. He paused, searching for the right words. Think of it as passing on what someone else gave me once. What do you mean? Thomas looked at Lily, who was showing Oliver something on her fingers, counting. When Jennifer died, I fell apart. Completely apart. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely take care of Lily. I have money, I have resources, but none of that mattered when I was drowning in grief. One of my neighbors, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman I'd maybe said hello to twice, she started showing up at my door with food. Not just any food, but full meals, perfectly prepared, enough for days. She'd bring them, hand them to me, and leave without saying much. Just eat, take care of that baby, honor your wife by living. He smiled at the memory. I tried to pay her. I tried to give her money for the food, to hire her as Lily's nanny, anything. She refused everything. Finally, I asked her why she was doing it. You know what she said? Rachel shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. She said, when my husband died 40 years ago, someone helped me. I never knew who paid my rent that year when I couldn't work, who made sure the bills got paid, who left the groceries on my doorstep. But someone did, and I survived. And now I help when I can. Because that's how the world should work. We catch each other when we fall. Thomas met Rachel's eyes. So let me catch you, please. Let someone help. Rachel was openly sobbing now, her hands pressed to her face. Oliver had gotten up from the table and was holding her again, and she lifted him up into her arms even though he was getting too big for it, holding him tight. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Thank you doesn't seem enough. Thank you is exactly enough, Thomas said. Thank you and a promise. What promise? That someday, when you can, you'll help someone else who needs it. That you'll catch someone when they fall. That's the only payment I want, keeping the cycle going. Rachel nodded, unable to speak. They finished packing everything, and Thomas arranged for a car service to take all the baked goods to a nearby shelter. Too much for him and Lily to possibly eat, and it felt right to share it. He also made another call, this one to his accountant, arranging for a transfer to Rachel's business account. Before they left, Oliver approached Thomas shyly. Mr. Bennett? Thank you for helping my mama. She works really hard, and she tries to make sure I don't know when she's worried, but I know. I always know. Thomas crouched down to Oliver's level. You're a good son, Oliver. Taking care of your mom, noticing when she needs help, that takes courage. Mama says courage is being scared, but doing the thing anyway. Your mama is very wise. Thomas pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. I want you to keep this. When you're older, when you're looking for work or need advice, or just want to talk about business, anything at all, you call me. Deal? Oliver took the card carefully, holding it like it was precious. Deal. Lily tugged on Thomas's sleeve. Daddy, can Oliver be my friend? Thomas looked at Rachel, who smiled through her tears and nodded. Yes, sweetheart. Oliver can definitely be your friend. They exchanged phone numbers, made plans to get the kids together after the holidays. As Thomas and Lily finally headed toward the door, Rachel called out, "Thomas, can I ask you something?" He turned back. "Of course. What made you stop? What made you come in here specifically when there are 100 other places you could have gone?" Thomas thought about it. "Honestly, the lights, the way this place looked warm and safe and like someone cared about it. Like home," he smiled. "Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be. I needed to remember that the world still has good people in it, that there's still beauty and hope. You reminded me of that tonight, so maybe I should be thanking you." Outside, the snow was still falling, and the city was transformed into something magical. Thomas carried Lily on his shoulders now, and she laughed with delight, trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. "Daddy, that lady was sad but then happy." "Yes, she was. Did we do a good thing?" "We did a very good thing." "Is that what Christmas means? Doing good things?" Thomas thought about how to answer this question that was so simple and so profound. "Christmas means a lot of things, Lilybug. But yes, I think helping people, showing kindness, making someone's burden a little lighter, that's a big part of what it means." "Maybe the biggest part?" "Good," Lily said with satisfaction. "I liked Oliver. He was sad too, but he was brave. He was very brave." They walked home through the snowy streets, and Thomas felt lighter than he had in months. Not because he'd spent money, that was easy, but because Oliver had asked a question that could have been ignored, could have been brushed aside, and Thomas had chosen not to ignore it. He'd chosen to see, really see what was in front of him. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Thomas sat by the window looking out at the city. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Oliver and I are home. We had dinner, real dinner with vegetables and everything. He's in bed with a full stomach and I'm sitting here crying again. Happy tears? I promise. You changed our lives tonight. You gave us hope. I promise I'll pay it forward. I promise I'll be the kind of person who helps others the way you helped us. Thank you. Merry Christmas." Thomas texted back, "Merry Christmas, Rachel. See you and Oliver in the new year. And remember, you already are that kind of person. You've raised a son who's brave enough to ask for help when he needs it, who's kind enough to worry about his mother. That's everything that matters." He set his phone down and looked at the picture of Jennifer on the mantel. She was smiling, holding newborn Lily, looking at the camera with those eyes that had always seen straight through to his soul. "I'm trying," he whispered to her image. "I'm trying to be the man you believed I was. I'm trying to raise Lily right. I'm trying to see people, really see them, the way you always did." The apartment was quiet except for the soft sound of Lily's breathing from her room. Thomas closed his eyes and thought about Oliver's question. "Mommy hasn't eaten. Can you share expired bread?" And how that's simple. Heartbreaking inquiry had opened a door to connection, to meaning, to the kind of moment that reminds you why we're all here. Not just to succeed or accumulate or achieve, but to see each other, to help each other, to catch each other when we fall. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, and Christmas Eve settled into Christmas Day. In the morning, there would be presents under the tree and pancakes for breakfast, and all the small joys of the holiday. But tonight, right now, what mattered was that somewhere across the city, a mother and son were warm and fed and hopeful, because someone had chosen to see them. And in seeing them, Thomas had found something he didn't know he'd lost. The certainty that there was still goodness in the world, still connection, still meaning in the simple act of opening your heart to another human being's struggle. The universe had put him in front of that bakery door for a reason. Oliver had been brave enough to ask for help, and Thomas had been wise enough to give it. That's how the world should work. That's how the world could work. One moment of kindness at a time. One door opened, one hand extended. One heart brave enough to ask, and another generous enough to answer. Merry Christmas to all who struggle. Merry Christmas to all who help. Merry Christmas to all who remember that we're in this together, that we need each other, that love and kindness aren't luxuries but necessities, as essential as bread, as precious as hope. Merry Christmas. And may we all find the courage to ask when we need help, and the wisdom to give it when we can.